My name is Sandra Kirby. I'm also with the American Principles Project, like my colleague Joe here. Another thing, in addition to what he spoke about, I wanted to highlight the fact that numerous studies have linked porn use, especially at early ages, with mental health issues, difficulties in establishing and maintaining meaningful relationships, and even sexually abusive behavior. Meanwhile, according to one study, and also multiples, the age varies. The average age children are exposed to online pornography is only 12 years old these days. It's getting younger and younger every single year. I think the need for this legislation is obvious. People keep bringing up the rights of these companies to have freedom of putting whatever content they want on there and this undue burden. What about the children's right not to know, to preserve their innocence, and to preserve their childhood? As a family-based organization, we consider that of the utmost importance to allow them to have these wholesome lives that will allow them to flourish later instead of being trapped in this very lonely, depressing addiction. As many have mentioned, it is worse than most drugs, and it's only going to harm them further in life and prevent them from actually connecting with others. They won't be able to connect with any of their friends, with any other citizens, and to come together as wholesome, full people. Thank you so much for your work on this. We're very much in favor.
Thank you for your testimony. Senator Zaffarani.
Thank you. Your testimony, both of you, reminds me of what we uncovered when we dealt with the tobacco industry and their deliberate attempt to addict children to tobacco. It was horrific, the steps that they took. And this is just as bad, if not worse. But my question to you is the marketing to boys or to girls or to both?
I think the marketing is to both. It appeals in different ways to boys in their sexuality and their masculinity in a very perverted way, and to women in their beauty and how they should be wanted and desired, but in a very inappropriate sense. Like previous witness mentioned, young girls want that attention. They want to be validated, and they want to be told they're beautiful. And someone who's older and understands how sex works and what they want from a child in a very inappropriate way, they can take advantage of that. And children simply don't know. They are curious, and they want to be validated by adults, by their parents, by those they see as their parents' peers. And young men want to be validated by those that they see as men, or as older women who will validate them as quote-unquote men, even though the disparity is evident to anyone who's mature, but not to a child who is not fully developed.
And Senator, to your point about the tobacco companies, that's what I think hentai and these other kinds of cartoon pornography are doing, is they're attempting to create a lifelong customer the same way the tobacco industry attempted to create lifelong customers decades before.
And do you have any additional data or information about whether the marketing is to boys and or to girls?
With the hentai porn specifically, I would say that it follows a similar pattern Sandra mentioned earlier.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Paxton.
Thank you. You've, of course, spoken about the addictive nature. And, you know, sometimes people think about something like this, that it's just people's preferences and opinions about things. But your testimony is that this is addictive material. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And Senator Zaffarini, that's a great analogy to the tobacco industry and the marketing to get kids addicted. So I appreciate the information you've brought and your testimony. Thank you. And I wanted to add a little something I had mentioned with the previous panel. I talked about the Office of Civil Commitment, and it occurred to me that we know what that is, but the folks in the chamber probably don't know what that is. That these are folks that are sex offenders, and so these are the folks that, when the contraband they're trying to keep out of that unit isn't drugs, it's pornography. So that just goes to how addictive this is, and these folks have, throughout their lives, acclimated, and that addiction has just deepened and deepened and deepened. Thank you.
Senator Perry.
Yeah, thank you. So we had tobacco, we have vape. We ignored those conversations at the end of Health and Human Services, that they weren't marketing kids in their Kool-Aid package, and now we have a vape update. Here's what I need from you. one of my other jobs is Pops. I have a 16-year-old granddaughter. I have 4 under 4.5. And you mentioned some of the cartoon. I can't keep up with what's on cartoons, and I don't know what the world was. Could you get the committee, if nobody wants it, I would love to have a list of those things that, as parents, my kids, of my grandkids, and as grandparents, where we would be more informed about checking devices of phones and things when that comes about. But I know they change, and I know there's different players, but I would really benefit from that because it's something, because I work here sometimes for $600 a month, we're down here a little bit. This is testimony that's way too familiar, and it's sad. But I think just a general awareness is a good thing for parents like me, that are grandparents that are in that role, because kids come across it with other kids, kids come across it in whatever venue, and if you're not paying attention, you wouldn't know it for what it is. You know, there was, I think, something my 16-year-old was watching was Malmané or something weird, and you looked at it and you watched it, and it wasn't pornographic, but it was definitely not what I would consider appropriate. So we cut it off. It wasn't in your face, but you could just see the underlings and the undertones of where some of that stuff was going to go. So you shut it off. Almané or something. I don't remember what it was, but anyway, it would benefit me if you could do that.
Senator, we'd be happy to provide you more information on that in a written form at a later time. I would also say that there's a lot of weird stuff on the internet that children may or may not get access to, whether it's on YouTube or otherwise. It's not necessarily pornographic, but that is suggestive in a way in an attempt to evade that measure. And I also think that the 1/3 threshold on qualifying for the age verification is I think an important part, and kind of gives providers the ability to make a determination there, but that might even be too low in that circumstance.
Senators, any other questions for these two witnesses? Thank you both for being here.